This is the Jeff Oravich Show.
All right, welcome back. I'm real happy to have back on the program the Senior Communications Manager with the Goldwater Institute, Joe Setyon. Joe, must be pretty happy. I mean, overall, the election, especially the big one here that we'll talk about in a second in Arizona. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me on the show, Jeff. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, I mean, you know, with everything that's going on, Goldwater is all about trying to, I don't know, how should I put this, keep the government off your back, kind of crushing your individual rights and freedoms. Would that be, that's probably not your mission statement, but it's probably word for word, but kind of pretty close, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. You know, our mission is to empower Americans to live freer, happier lives. Now, we know that the way that happens is by getting government out of the way.
Yeah.
And that's what we fight to do every day.
Yeah. We got a lot of work to do. I mean, just real quick before we get into one of the propositions in Arizona, I mean, how much work do we have to do as a nation? I mean, we've got Trump coming in, obviously, and making a lot of picks, and you know, he's got someone like Elon Musk advising him, and Vivek Ramaswamy talking about the size of government, which I think you and I would both agree. The size of government is big part of the problem here when it comes to individual freedoms, in my opinion. What do you think about what they have cut out for them to try to get this stuff done?
Yeah, well, look, Jeff, we know that government is the single, you know, Ronald Reagan put it best. It's cliche now, but he said, you know, when the government knocks on your door and says, the worst words in the English language are, I'm here from the government and I'm here to help.
Yeah, the scariest.
Yeah. I'm butchering that quote so badly, but I think you know what I'm talking about.
No, I do.
Now, look, we know that our federal government and our state government, there's just so much bloat. There's so much wasteful spending. There's also just so many things that you have to ask permission from the government to do that you just shouldn't have to do. You shouldn't have to ask the government permission to earn a living in the career of your choice, or to try to save your own life, or to send your kids, you know, to the school that best meets their needs instead of, you know, whatever zip code they were born into. Yeah. So we know that there's a lot of work to be done at the federal level, but also at the state, and the city, and the local government. You know, I think it's a good thing anytime somebody says, let's start. Let's get started and see, you know, what we can do to make sure that Americans can live happier lives.
I agree, Joe. I mean, I'm like, I think that it'll be hard to accomplish everything they want to do, like anything. But just the fact that we've got someone there talking about it now and saying, "Hey, we got to cut this. We got to do this. We got to, you know, we're too big over here and the other place." That is positive because we haven't had that for a very, very long time. I can't remember when. But on the size of government, though, I was just talking about this before you came on air. Angela and I were hitting on this. It's like close to 40% of GDP activity is government in this country now. I'm talking from local to state to federal. It's 40% of the economic activity. The founding fathers would probably be like just spinning in their graves over that. He'd be like, what? How did you do this?
Well, look, the point of government is to make sure that you can live your life the way that you want to without hurting anyone else. And then it's the point of government is to keep you safe and to kind of get out of the way. Yeah. And what we see now, you know, it's 2024. Over the past 250 years, the government has grown so much beyond what our, like you said, what our founders, what a lot of people from, you know, the 1800s and the 1900s even would have thought. It's just grown so much.
Yeah, they warned us about it. Okay, Joe, a big one that's a property rights win and something that I know you were supporting, I was supporting. I've called it, maybe I'm not the most eloquent person in the world, Joe, but I called it the crack alley bill just because you try to get descriptive on these things. And surprised that it's Prop 313, right? Or 312.
It's 312.
312. Right. I'm surprised the campaign didn't take my slogan and run with it, but whatever. But explain that passed. And in Arizona, we had 13 statewide propositions and only 5 actually passed. So not a very, huge success rate as far as getting them through. I can't remember if that's normal or not, but this thing actually passed 312. Give us the lowdown on what's in there and how it'll help people.
Absolutely. And, it passed, but it also passed overwhelmingly.
Yeah.
I think Arizona voters showed that they are tired of what has been happening. And what has been happening is that you have homeless encampments overrunning the streets in Phoenix and Tucson, wherever you look. You have homeless people, you have crimes that are going on, vandalism, public drug use, these things that, you shouldn't have to see on your own property or right outside your property. And then the government is not doing anything about it. They basically said, okay, you can do whatever you want in these parts of the cities. We're not going to do anything to enforce the law. And so what happened is, these massive parts of these cities dissolved into these dens of lawlessness. You had property and business owners. They had to pay with their own money for mitigation expenses. They had to, buy security cameras and fencing, and they had to do all these things just to protect what they built. A lot of businesses, a lot of property owners didn't make it. They were forced to sell, or, their business went out of business, or what have you. And so what Prop 312 does is it says that if you're hurt by government's failure to protect your rights, government is supposed to use your tax dollars to pay for public safety, to protect your health, things like that. It says that the government will actually give you your money back if it doesn't do that. And if you have to, pay out of pocket for mitigation expenses, like security cameras, fencing, things like that. It basically just gives you your tax dollars back.
Yeah, you're giving them
when the government is not using them for the way that they're supposed to be used.
Yeah, okay. You pay into it. You expect, well, if I have an alley behind my house that's city property or whatever, that there's not going to be people living there or doing drugs and leaving, needles there, whatever, or even throwing them over the fence. I saw stories down in the Phoenix area on that. So all you're really getting is the money back that they've failed to utilize correctly. I mean, that's how I would sum it up.
That's absolutely right. And, imagine not only did the city let people, do drugs and do whatever in an alley behind your house, what if they actually told people, go there? And that's what they did, at least in Phoenix and in a lot of other places. The government actually said, we don't really know how to deal with this problem, so let's put all the homeless people in this one area. And they didn't really think about, the people who had built things, who had built lives and communities and careers and businesses there. And those livelihoods in many cases were just ruined.
Yeah. And you had the big case in Phoenix. I think you guys really took a lead on this one where they had that huge encampment and, just outside the Capitol, but in between like there and downtown. You guys dealt with that big issue and there was a big court battle over that.
Yes, there was. That's exactly right. Now, we filed an amicus brief and we did support the case, although we did not represent the plaintiffs, although we were working with them and, two of those plaintiffs just won our Freedom Award last week, our annual Freedom Award. Joe and Debbie Felice. They ran a business in the heart of the zone, a sub shop right next to the Capitol. A lot of people like, and the Phoenix government said, we're going to do the zone and we're going to let this happen. And so Joe and Debbie said, no, we're not. Actually, not on our watch. Because they helped their neighbors. They saw what was happening, so they filed suit. And eventually, the judge said, look, the city of Phoenix is creating and maintaining a public nuisance. And that's illegal. And it said, you have to stop that. You have to clean up the streets. Thanks in large part to those business owners like Joe and Debbie and, like a lot of people around the city and around the state, standing up for their rights and saying, I thought the government was supposed to protect my rights, not violate them.
Yeah. And now they voted too, quite frankly. A lot of people, that was one of the key issues. It's been a big change in the direction of the country, quite frankly. All right, Joe, real quick before we run out of time, this goes into effect, 90 days after the certification of election. Anyway, coming up soon. And then people will have the ability to petition to get their money back. They have to go before like some committee that's going to be set up or something. Is it going to be a government process or is it going to be fairly straightforward?
Yeah, so we expect this to be a pretty straightforward process. We passed another law a few years back. I believe it was Prop 20.
207, was it the property one where if
Yeah,
the government impacts your...
207.
Yeah. Important one.
Yeah,
there.
it was.
Yeah.
You know, I was trying to figure out if it was 207 or 208 because the other one, 208, is a really bad one that we did not support. But yes, Prop 207, and what that did is it let people apply for, you know, the money that the government was taking from you if it told you what you could not do on your own property. And that's been around for now more than 15 years. It's been very successful. It's been pretty straightforward process, and we see that happening the same way here. But again, ideally, no one would have to use this. No one would have to apply for, refunds. And that's because ideally what we want the city to do, we want all these cities across the state to do, is to do their job and to enforce the law and to protect their citizens' rights so that you don't have to, file for refunds.
Well, I will remind people when this gets into effect, because I'm sure somewhere it'll still be an issue with the society we live in nowadays. But if you're negatively impacted by what's going on in the adjacent property and your local government's not doing anything about it, there's recourse now through Prop 312. I don't know if you will have on goldwaterinstitute.org or if you will be able to point me at some point, like once the process is developed. That would be really cool to do a follow-up, Joe, just so people can know.
Oh, absolutely.
Here's what we do.
Yeah.
So just let me know. Keep me in the loop on that. Joe,
Definitely.
keep up the battle. This is a good one. And it's Arizona's just a little crazy. I'll admit that when it comes to elections, because what passes and what fails, sometimes they just are like, I'm like, how does that happen? Because sometimes you're like, wouldn't this person that voted for this also vote for that? But I'm glad this one passed. I was a little surprised, quite frankly.
Yeah, I think Arizona voters they're kind of fed up with what's happening to their cities and want change.
Yeah, and very independent-minded for sure. All right, Joe, appreciate it. We'll talk with you again real soon.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Thanks for watching this video. Thank you to everyone listening on the podcast as well. Do me a favor right now. Please subscribe. I appreciate everybody that's doing it. Subscribe, and share with your friends. If you've already done that, leave a comment. That helps us out a lot, and we'll see you back here real soon.